The morning light poured into the kitchen like honey, warm, golden, and still. Tessa stood by the window, one hand on her belly, the other holding a cup of raspberry leaf tea. She wasn't just sipping, she was pausing, soaking in a moment that felt almost unreal. A sketchbook lay open on the table. On the page, a fairy floated above wildflowers, her wings stretched wide, delicate, glowing in the pencil's soft shading. It was more than just art. It was Tessa's quiet way of remembering who she used to be, the girl who once believed in magic, in love, in forever. Before the contractions, before the silence, before Dylan started coming home late. But that morning, he arrived early. The back door creaked open, and there he was, Dylan Monroe, tall, polished, with a smile that still caught her off guard. In his hands, a bouquet of peonies, her favorite. "Happy anniversary, my artist," he said. And for a moment, Tessa let herself believe again that maybe, just maybe, this was love, that maybe this time things would be different. But deep down, she knew, things that look perfect often aren't. The exam room smelled like sanitizer and static. Tessa lay on the paper-covered bed, the crinkle beneath her back loud in the silence. Dylan sat beside her, scrolling on his phone, until the technician walked in. She smiled politely, placed the gel on Tessa's belly, and began moving the wand. A low hum filled the room as the image on the screen flickered to life, shadowy, grainy, but real. Then the tech squinted, paused, tilted her head. Tessa's heart skipped. Is something wrong? The woman gave a quick shake of her head, then smiled wide, knowing, "You're having twins." For a second, the room froze. 2 heartbeats, 2 boys, 2 lives dancing inside her, floating like stars not yet named. Tessa gasped, then laughed through tears. Her hand instinctively reached for Dylan's, but he was frozen, staring at the screen, not with wonder, but something else. His face didn't light up. His mouth moved, but the words fell flat. "Twins! Wow! That's great," he said, kissing her knuckles. But his jaw tightened. Tessa's smile faltered, and deep in her chest, joy and fear started mixing like oil and water. At first, it was small. So small Tessa almost didn't notice. Dylan stopped resting his hand on her belly at night. He used to talk to the babies like they were already here. Now he barely looked at her bump. No kisses on the stomach, no questions like, did they kick today? Just silence. Then came the missed vitamins. Not once, but twice. "I forgot. Sorry," he said the first time. The second time, he didn't say anything at all. Tessa told herself it was stress, work, the twins, life. But the silence stretched longer, and the words, when they came, felt thinner, shorter, drier. He used to say things like, "Can I bring you anything?" Now it was just, "Don't stay up," and then the late nights started. Meetings ran long. West Coast client called late. Traffic was insane. Always a reason. Always. Just enough to raise a question, but not enough to confront. Tessa stood in the kitchen one night, alone. The peonies from their anniversary were wilted, curling inward, just like something inside her. That was the moment she felt it. The man she married was still in the house, but he wasn't really with her anymore. The doorbell rang just after lunch. Tessa waddled to the door, balancing her swollen feet and a forced smile. Barbara Monroe, her mother-in-law, stood there perfectly dressed, holding a box of pastries and wearing that smile. That smile that never quite touched her eyes. "You look tired," Barbara said as soon as Tessa opened the door. "Carrying 2 must be exhausting." Tessa forced a polite laugh and stepped aside. "It has its moments." Barbara walked in like the house still belonged to her son, not to the woman carrying his twins. She placed the pastries on the counter, poured herself tea without asking, and sat down like it was her right. Then came the words, soft but sharp as glass. "Have you and Dylan thought about the cost? Twins are a lot. Cribs, diapers, formula, car seats, twice everything." Tessa's chest tightened. We've talked. We're managing. Barbara sipped her tea, then tilted her head. Are you? She asked. Because Dylan has a lot on his plate. He's on the verge of something major at work. He needs room to grow. Space. Tessa blinked. We're building a family. That is growth. Barbara's lips curled slightly. He wanted a child, Tessa. One child. Not two. Not this. That sentence landed like a knife. Not this. The clock on Tessa's studio wall ticked past midnight. She was still at her desk, fingers smudged with charcoal, trying to finish an illustration due in less than a week. Her hand trembled slightly. Not from fatigue, but from something deeper, something colder, something named silence. She paused, staring at the page, a drawing of a girl reaching for something just out of frame. She realized she'd sketched that pose 3 times this week. Maybe she was the girl. In the hallway, light spilled in from under the bedroom door. Tessa stood there for a moment, heart pounding with a hope that felt too fragile. She stepped inside quietly. Dylan lay on his side, back turned, phone glowing in his hand. Tessa crawled into bed slowly. Not a word, not a glance, not a touch. She placed a hand gently on her belly, feeling a faint flutter. A tiny kick, a tiny reminder life was growing. She looked over, silently pleading for something. A kiss, a question, a sign. But all she saw was the curve of his shoulder and the cold wall of his back. And still, she told herself, he's just tired. He'll come back to me. He always does. But this time, he didn't. The nights were the hardest. Not because of the backaches or the swollen feet, though those were bad enough, but because that was when the silence grew teeth. Tessa would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the turns Dylan made in bed, only to realize he wasn't making any. He was already asleep, or pretending to be. Sometimes she would whisper, "Did you hear that? I think the baby's kicked." No response, not even a murmur. Other nights, she would get up and pace the hallway, cradling her stomach like a fragile balloon, asking herself questions she had no strength to say out loud. What changed? Is it me? Is he already gone? She began avoiding mirrors. Her body didn't feel like hers anymore. But worse, her life didn't either. Even her dreams were different now. She no longer dreamed of nurseries or lullabies. She dreamed of silence, of locked doors, of reaching for hands that never reached back. Tessa wasn't in pain from the pregnancy. She was in pain from disappearing, bit by bit, in a house where she was supposed to be safe. It started as a cramp. Dull, low, almost easy to ignore. Tessa shifted in bed, thinking maybe she had slept in a strange position. But then it came again, sharper this time, tighter. The pain wrapped around her back like a slow-moving snake, squeezing until she couldn't breathe. She clutched her belly, her heart pounded. She couldn't ignore it now. She reached for Dylan's side of the bed. Cold, untouched, empty. Her fingers scrambled for her phone. She hit his number. 1 ring. 2. He picked up. "Dylan," she gasped, "I think something's wrong. It hurts. It really hurts, I think." His voice came through calm. "Tessa, I'm not home. I'm out of town on a job site. You need to call an ambulance, okay?" She froze. "What? Where are you?" In the background, a woman's voice, soft, laughing, close. Tessa didn't breathe, didn't cry, didn't even scream. She just said, "Okay," and hung up. The pain didn't stop. It came in waves, harder and closer together, like something inside her was tearing. Tessa stumbled down the hallway, one hand on the wall, the other cradling her belly. Her legs buckled. Warmth spread between her thighs. She looked down. Blood. So much blood. A choking sob escaped her lips. She made it to the front door barely. Her fingers fumbled with the handle as sirens howled in the distance, louder now, closer. The world spun. Everything smelled like metal and fear. And as her knees hit the floor, Tessa wrapped both arms around her belly and whispered to the life inside her, "Please hold on, boys. Just hold on. Mama's still here. I'm still here." The door flew open. Flashlights, boots on tile, gloved hands lifting her, and then the cold. A brutal gust of night air as they carried her into the ambulance. She didn't feel the wheels roll. She didn't feel the IV go in. She only heard her own voice inside her skull over and over again. "Please, hold on." The lights in the ER were too bright, too sterile, too far from everything that felt human. Tessa's vision blurred. Faces hovered above her, voices sharp, clipped fast. Placental abruption, preterm labor, she's 26 weeks, call NICU now. She couldn't process the words, only the fear in the doctor's voice, only the cold hands on her belly, only the beeping, loud, urgent overlapping. "She's losing blood. We need vitals stabilized now. Push more fluids." Tessa tried to speak, to ask, "Are they okay?" But her lips wouldn't move. Everything started to fade, the lights, the pain, even the panic. She felt herself slipping like water through fingers. No Dylan, no hand to hold, no promise that it would be okay. Just metal, just cold, just silence. And then darkness. Tessa woke to a dim hospital room and the soft hum of machines. Her body ached. Her lips were dry, but she was alive. Then she felt a warm hand wrapped around hers. She turned. It was Harper, eyes swollen, hair in a messy bun, holding on like she'd been there for hours. "You scared the hell out of me," Harper whispered, voice cracking. Tessa blinked slowly. "The babies, they're okay for now. You're on strict bed rest, no stress, no movement." Harper hesitated. Then her tone changed. "Tessa, I need to tell you something." Harper took a breath like it hurt. "I went to your house. I wanted to bring your charger and a clean robe, but Dylan was there. With her. With Chelsea." Tessa's heart thudded. She didn't speak. Harper went on. "They weren't just talking. They had papers, legal documents. They were discussing timelines, saying things like, 'Since she's stuck in the hospital, this gives us a clean window to finish everything without a fight.'" Tessa's breath caught. "They're moving money," Harper nodded slowly, "transferring assets, hiding things, planning behind your back." And in that moment, surrounded by beeping monitors, IV drips, and hospital-grade silence, Tessa realized she wasn't just being left, she was being erased. The door opened without warning. Dylan walked in like he was stepping into a boardroom, not a hospital room where the mother of his unborn twins lay fighting for their lives. His suit was sharp, his cologne familiar, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood a man in a tailored black jacket, briefcase in hand. "Tessa." Dylan nodded, too casual. "I figured we should handle this while there's time." The lawyer, slick and well-rehearsed, opened the folder. "We've prepared a straightforward separation agreement," he said. "You'll retain ownership of the condo. Mr. Monroe will provide financial support and a one-time payment to cover initial expenses for the children." Tessa didn't speak. Her eyes locked on the paper in front of her. Dylan stepped closer. "This is fair," he said. "It lets us both move on cleanly." Harper's jaw clenched from across the room. Tessa's voice, when it came, was clear. Still, not loud, but steel. "No." Dylan blinked. "What?" "I said no." She pushed the folder back toward the lawyer. "I am not signing anything while I'm hooked to a fetal monitor praying our sons survive." Dylan's face tightened. "Tessa, come on. Don't make this harder than it has to be." She met his eyes fully, finally. "No, Dylan, you don't get to walk in here with a lawyer and pretend this is just business, not while I'm bleeding from what you've done." The room went quiet. Even the machines seemed to pause, as if the universe itself leaned in to listen. Tessa sat upright now. No tears, no shaking, only fire behind her eyes. She looked at Dylan, really looked. not as the man she once loved, but as the man who had walked away when she needed him most. "You want this clean," she said. "A nice little exit so you can go back to Chelsea without guilt. But let me be very clear." She picked up the folder, held it for a moment. "I'm not signing anything," she said slowly. "Not while I'm hooked to machines counting the heartbeats of 2 lives you walked away from." Dylan tried to interrupt, but she raised her hand, steady, controlled. "You think this is hard for you?" Her voice dropped but sharpened. "Try lying in this bed, wondering if you'll lose both your children alone." The lawyer cleared his throat. "We can revisit this when—" "No," Tessa cut him off. She turned to Harper. "Would you please show them out?" Harper stood, chin high, shoulders square. "Gladly." Dylan hesitated for one last moment, like he still had power, but he didn't. Not anymore. The next day passed in a haze of IV drips, nurse checks, and tired silence. Then a knock. Gentle, almost hesitant. The door creaked open, and there he was, Aiden Blake. His scrubs were wrinkled, his hair a little longer than she remembered, but his eyes, those soft, steady eyes, hadn't changed. He lingered at the threshold, unsure. "Hi," he said, like he didn't know if he had the right to be there. "I work here now, neurology. I didn't know you were admitted until I saw your name on the board." Tessa blinked. She hadn't seen him in years, not since that summer before everything changed. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. "I just wanted to check in." He stepped closer, but not too close. No pity, no judgment, just presence. Then softly, "I'm here. Just breathe." And somehow, in that moment, Tessa did. The next evening, the room was quiet. No lawyers, no machines screaming. Just the soft click of a door opening. Aiden stepped in again. He didn't knock this time. He just walked over to the foot of her bed with something wrapped in brown paper. He placed it on the tray table. "What is it?" Tessa asked, her voice scratchy from hours of silence. Aiden smiled. "Something I thought you'd forgotten." She peeled back the wrapping. Inside, a brand new sketchbook, a tin of graphite pencils, the soft kind, the ones she used to swear by. Everything smelled like paper and possibility. Tessa's fingers hovered above the first page. They trembled. "I haven't drawn since I don't even know when," she whispered. Aiden pulled up a chair, sitting a safe distance away. "No pressure," he said. "No expectations." Then he added gently but firmly, "Let this be your way back." She stared at the blank page, then slowly lifted the pencil. The first line came out shaky, uneven, but it was hers. And then another. It started with a sharp pinch, then another. Then came the wave, thick, hot, and cruel. Tessa gasped. The pencil dropped from her hand. The sketchbook slid to the floor. Another cramp, stronger, meaner. She clutched the bedsheet, knuckles white. Pain tore through her abdomen like wildfire. She reached for the call button, but her fingers wouldn't cooperate. Everything blurred. Everything screamed. The door slammed open. 2 nurses. Then a doctor. Then Aiden. "Tessa!" A nurse shouted. "She's in labor!" "No!" Tessa panted. "No, no, no! It's too early!" Monitors flared. The sound of twin heartbeats, erratic, scattered. Then the doctor's voice, loud and terrifying. "Baby B is in distress." Chaos erupted. Straps pulled across her belly, IVs flushed, a mask pressed against her face. And through it all, Aiden appeared beside her. He grabbed her hand, firm, warm, steady. He bent close, his voice clear, anchoring her. "Breathe with me, for them." In that second, nothing else mattered. Not Dylan, not divorce, not fear. Just air, just heartbeats, and the will to fight for them both. It was 4 days after the emergency. The boys were stable, Tessa was stronger, and for once the room didn't feel like a battlefield. Then a knock. Soft, hesitant, familiar. She looked up. It was Dylan. Same crisp shirt, same carefully gelled hair, but something in his face had cracked. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was certainty. "Hey," he said, "can I come in?" Tessa didn't answer. She didn't need to. He stepped in anyway. "I've been thinking," he began. "I messed up. Chelsea, she left. She said she wasn't ready for all this. But I am. I want to be here, with you, for the boys." Tessa blinked slowly, then sat up straighter. Her voice was calm, clear, final. "There is no us anymore, Dylan. You buried it." He opened his mouth, closed it. "I thought maybe—" "No." She cut him off gently but firmly. "You didn't just cheat, Dylan. You disappeared. You handed me divorce papers while I was fighting to keep our children alive. And now, just because she left, you want to come back?" She shook her head. "We can co-parent, but this," she gestured between them, "this is over." And for the first time, Dylan had no words. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was soft, the room calm, and Tessa had just started sketching again. Tiny hands, half-finished wings. A pair of baby shoes drawn in pencil. Then Harper walked in, carrying a small canvas tote and a smile that looked suspicious. Tessa raised an eyebrow. "What did you do?" Harper dropped the tote on the bed, pulled out a thick manila envelope, and handed it over. "I may or may not have sent your high school portfolio to Summit Hill Gallery," she said casually. Tessa froze. "You did what?" "They called this morning," Harper said, grinning like a kid who just got away with something. "They loved your early work, said it had raw emotional texture, whatever that means." Tessa stared at her. The silence between them pulsed. "Harper, I haven't shown my art in over a decade." "I know," Harper said, softening, "but maybe it's time." Inside the envelope was a letter, official, typed, stamped, from Summit Hill Art Collective. They wanted her, not as Dylan's wife, not as a patient in a bed, not even as a mother fighting to stay upright, but as an artist. The sun dipped lower, casting golden lines across the hospital wall. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes not from emptiness, but from peace. Tessa sat by the window, her sketch pad balanced on her lap. Her hands moved slowly, carefully, not rushing, not planning, just feeling. When she finally set the pencil down, she looked. 2 tiny feet, one slightly bigger than the other, curled in the warm outline of a womb. No faces, no colors, just graphite, paper, and love. A silent portrait of survival, of sacrifice, of something whole, created from something broken. Tessa stared at it for a long time. She didn't cry, she didn't smile. She just breathed and felt something shift quietly inside her. Strength, pride, freedom. No need for revenge, no desire for pity. Just this, a mother, an artist, whole again. The day Tessa was discharged from the hospital, the sky was soft gray. Not gloomy, just quiet. Waiting outside the main doors was a small figure in a navy coat, clutching a homemade casserole and a folded baby blanket. Tessa blinked. "Mom?" Her mother looked up. Not a word at first, just a nod. A breath. A long pause. Then, "Not on my watch." Tessa almost laughed through her tears. That night, the house was fuller than it had been in months. Not with noise, but with care. Her mother bustled between the nursery and the kitchen like she'd never left. She folded tiny clothes. She hummed lullabies Tessa hadn't heard since childhood. She left herbal tea by the bedside before Tessa could even ask. There were no long apologies, no emotional speeches, just the quiet presence of a woman who knew exactly how to keep a ship steady. And for the first time in a long time, Tessa felt like a daughter again, and a mother no longer alone. The gallery hummed with a gentle murmur, footsteps on marble, wine glasses clinking softly, whispers of awe. But near the tall window at the far end of the room, everything was still. Aiden stood there, hands in his pockets, staring out into the city lit gold by the setting sun. The light caught his eyes, casting flecks of amber across his face. Tessa walked toward him, her dress soft, her heels quiet. She didn't speak at first. She stood beside him, looked out the same window. Then he said it, not loud, not dramatic, just true. "You've changed." She turned to him, calm, steady. "So have you." No music swelled, no crowd turned, just two people who had walked through fire and now stood in the quiet hole. Visual Tessa holding her twins stands in front of her painting a womb, two tiny feet and a heart stitched with red thread. Tessa's voice, "He left me at my most vulnerable, when I was bleeding, breaking, and barely breathing. But in that silence, the kind that echoes louder than screams, I found something I didn't know I had, strength. Not the kind that roars, but the kind that stitches your soul back together, one thread at a time. They said I'd never raise two boys alone, but love showed up in the most unexpected ways." She lifts the baby slightly, a quiet smile. "So this is not a story about what broke me. It's a story about what I built after." Sometimes the people we count on most walk away when we need them the most. But that doesn't mean we're broken. It means we get the chance, painful as it is, to become someone stronger. Someone who chooses love that heals, not love that hurts. Someone who learns that silence isn't weakness, it's space for rebirth. Tessa's story reminds us that being left behind isn't the end. It's often the beginning of becoming everything we were meant to be. So if you're going through something right now, heartbreak, betrayal, loneliness, just remember, you are allowed to fall, but you are also capable of rising. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength or the strength of someone you love, then don't leave without subscribing. We tell true stories of heartbreak, healing, and human resilience, because every voice matters, especially the ones that once trembled. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment. Your story might help someone else heal. Together, we grow stronger.